I had 30 seconds before dessert arrived and bullets tore through his body. My fingers trembled as I scrawled the warning on the back of a cocktail napkin, folding it small enough to hide in my palm. The paper felt fragile, like it might crumble before reaching him. Around me, azure moon pulsed with calculated opulence, champagne flutes singing against bone china, hushed conversations about offshore accounts, the rustle of cashmere against velvet banquettes. Outside, December winds clawed at the panoramic windows overlooking the Chicago River. Inside, the air was thick, stifling, oppressive. I moved toward table 7 like walking through quicksand. Park Ji-hoon sat with his spine against the glass, the city sprawling behind him like a kingdom of ice and light. He looked carved from obsidian, angular jaw, black hair swept back severe, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. His fingers tapped the table in a deliberate pattern, predatory and patient. Next to him, Isabella Moretti leaned close, murmuring something that painted her crimson mouth into a smile. Her emerald necklace caught candlelight, scattering green fire across white linen. She looked like a woman drowning in devotion. She wasn't. Before we dive in, beautiful people, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe. It's the best way you can support us as we continue delivering captivating stories that'll keep you hooked every single day. 15 minutes ago, I'd heard her arrange his murder. Azure Moon's wine vault wasn't really for wine. It was a climate-controlled showroom in the sublevel, glass walls and ambient lighting that made vintage bottles glow like artifacts. I'd gone down to retrieve a 2012 Barolo for table 12, weaving through rows of Burgundy and Bordeaux when voices stopped me cold. Female, clipped, speaking rapid Italian. I froze between the Chiantis and Barolos, my hand suspended over the bottle I'd been reaching for. Al tavolo set, vicino al vetro. He's at table 7, near the glass. My Italian was restaurant-grade, good enough to distinguish carbonara from cacio e pepe, but fragments pierced through. Table 7. The window. Gli altri sono già in posizione. Uno al bar, tre vicino alla cucina. The others are already positioned. 1 at the bar, 3 near the kitchen. Then she switched languages entirely, her voice dropping into something harsh and guttural that sounded Slavic. Russian maybe, words wrapping around each other like barbed wire. I should have coughed, announced myself, acted professional. Instead, I stood frozen, pulse hammering, and listened. She switched back to Italian. Avrai un tiro pulito non appena si sistema. You'll have a clean shot as soon as he's settled. My breath caught. The wine vault, temperature-controlled to precisely 55 degrees, suddenly felt arctic. She continued in that other language, brutal consonants and rolled vowels I couldn't parse, but the tone was unmistakable. This wasn't discussion. This was confirmation. Countdown. Heels clicked on stone, approaching the stairs. I flattened myself against the wine rack, praying shadows and bottles would swallow me whole. Through gaps between $1,000 vintages, I glimpsed her, tall, elegant, draped in cream silk that cost more than my student loan debt. Dark hair pinned up, emerald necklace throwing light. Isabella Moretti, currently sitting at table 7, performing devotion to the man she'd just sentenced to death. She vanished up the stairs, leaving perfume hanging in the air, expensive florals that now smelled like funeral arrangements. I stood there counting heartbeats. 10, 15, 20, waiting for my legs to remember their purpose. When I finally climbed back to the main floor, Barolo forgotten, my mind was racing. Table 7 by the window. 1 at the bar, 3 near the kitchen. Clean shot. I stepped onto the restaurant floor and everything snapped into terrible clarity. Table 7. Corner booth. Park Ji-hoon and Isabella Moretti, Chicago's most photographed power couple. He ran the Korean underworld, everyone knew it even if nobody said it. She was Italian mob aristocracy. Their engagement had dominated society pages for months. Romance wrapped around a bullet. I scanned the restaurant with new vision, my serving tray pressed to my chest like armor. One man at the bar, late 30s, expensive suit, nursing whiskey he hadn't touched in 30 minutes. He wasn't watching the game on the overhead screen. He was watching table 7. 3 men near the kitchen entrance, lingering, loitering. Menus open, but never ordering. 2 had their backs to walls. The third kept one hand inside his jacket. Terror kicked through my ribs hard enough to bruise. I looked back at table 7. At Park Ji-hoon, laughing at something Isabella said, completely oblivious that the woman stroking his arm had orchestrated his execution. That in less than an hour, when dessert arrived and everyone focused on the tableside preparation, for men would fill him with bullets. I could leave. Clock out early. Claim food poisoning. Let whatever was coming just come. Men like Park Ji-hoon didn't stumble into my world by accident. He'd earned enemies. Maybe he'd earned this. But I thought about my father in that hospital bed on the south side, connected to machines that measured his life in electronic beeps. I thought about every nurse who'd stayed past their shift to comfort him. Every doctor who'd advocated when insurance refused. I thought about mercy, unearned and freely given. I thought, I can't just watch someone die. So I grabbed a napkin from my apron, clicked my pen, and wrote 7 words that would either save him or destroy me. My reflection in wine glasses looked translucent as I approached table 7. Each step felt like moving through honey, time stretching and compressing. I was hyper-aware of everything. Polyester scratching my skin. My shoes squeaking on marble. Isabella's laugh sounding like shattering crystal. "You're McKellen, sir." My voice emerged steady, professional, like I hadn't just overheard a murder contract, like my hands weren't shaking. I set the crystal tumbler on white linen with practiced precision. The scotch caught candlelight, glowing amber. Then I did the thing every server is trained never to do. I touched him. My thumb pressed the back of his hand as I slid the folded napkin beneath his coaster. Contact lasted maybe half a second, a violation of every boundary between his world and mine. Park Ji-hoon's eyes cut to mine. They were darker than I expected, not cold but calculating, the kind of eyes that dissected intention. His gaze held mine a beat too long and something shifted in my chest. Not attraction, recognition. Like staring into the eyes of a wolf that could either let you pass or tear you apart. "Read it," I mouthed. "Please." His fingers curled around the napkin, palm concealing it completely. "Is there a problem with service, darling?" Isabella's voice sliced through the moment, sweet and venomous. Ji-hoon's expression remained neutral. He lifted his glass, took a slow sip of scotch, and with his other hand unfolded the note beneath the table where Isabella couldn't see. I stood there, tray clutched to my chest, watching his face for any reaction. Nothing. Not a flicker. Just those dark eyes scanning 7 words. "Your fiancé sold you out." They're in position. Then his jaw tightened. Imperceptible unless you were looking. The smallest tell. He knew. Ji-hoon set his glass down with a soft clink that somehow cut through ambient restaurant noise. When he spoke, his voice was smooth, controlled, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "I'd like to make a toast." Isabella blinked, her smile faltering. "Now? We haven't even had dessert yet." "Now." He gestured to me without looking away from her. "Another glass for my fiancé." "The same." I hesitated, looking between them. Isabella's perfectly composed face showed the first crack, tension around her eyes, rigidity in her posture. "I already have wine, Min," she said, voice light but strained. "Then you'll have scotch too." It wasn't a request. I walked back to the bar on autopilot, poured the second Macallan with trembling hands, returned. The restaurant continued around us, laughter, conversation, soft jazz from hidden speakers, completely unaware that table 7 was a bomb waiting to detonate. I placed the glass before Isabella. Her red nails gleamed as she reached for it, but Ji-hoon's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "Let's switch," he said softly. "I want a drink from your glass. You drink from mine." The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Isabella's laugh came out forced. "That's strange even for you." "Is it?" Ji-hoon's smile was a blade. "I thought couples in love did romantic things. Sharing. Trusting." He pushed his glass toward her, holding her stare. "Or is there a reason you don't want to drink what I've been drinking?" Silence stretched. I stood frozen, watching Isabella's face cycle through emotions, confusion, fear, fury, before settling into something carefully blank. Of course not. She picked up his glass with a hand that trembled slightly. To loyalty, Ji-hoon said. To loyalty, she echoed. They drank. Nothing happened. The scotch wasn't poisoned. But Isabella's hesitation confirmed everything. Ji-hoon set down the glass and looked directly at me. Really looked, taking in my name tag, my face, the fear I couldn't hide. Zara Mitchell, he read slowly, his accent making my name sound dangerous. Tell me, Zara. Do you believe in fate? My throat closed. I'm not sure, sir. I didn't either. He leaned back, one arm draped casually over the booth. Until 30 seconds ago. Isabella's face went white. That's when I realized I'd just started a war. The restaurant continued its expensive symphony around us, silver scraping porcelain, hushed conversations about mergers and vacation homes, the jazz quartet playing something melancholic. But at table 7, time had frozen. Isabella's red nails gleamed against white linen as she reached for her wine glass, movements suddenly mechanical. Ji-hoon sat perfectly still, a predator calculating which direction prey would bolt. Zara, he said my name again, tasting each syllable. How long have you worked here? My mouth went dry. 9 months, sir. And in those 9 months, how many assassination plots have you witnessed? The question landed like a physical blow. Isabella's laugh came out too high, too brittle. Min, darling, you're frightening the poor girl. She probably just saw someone suspicious and got nervous. Is that what happened, Zara? His eyes never left mine. They were obsidian in candlelight, ancient and bottomless. Did you just get nervous? I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The napkin was still in his hand, my handwriting stark against white paper. 7 words that had just painted a target on my spine. A subtle shift rippled through the restaurant. One of the men near the kitchen stood, his hand sliding inside his jacket. At the bar, the man with untouched whiskey turned slightly, angling for better view of our table. Ji-hoon saw it too. I watched calculation flash across his face, cold, instant, lethal. I think, he said softly, standing in one fluid motion, we should discuss this somewhere more private. Isabella's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. We haven't had dessert yet. I've lost my appetite. He extracted himself from her grasp with surgical precision. Then he turned to me, and his expression shifted into something that made my blood run cold. Fury. Disgust. The mask of an angry customer about to ruin someone's night. His hand closed around my upper arm like iron. You, he hissed loud enough for nearby tables to hear, spilled scotch on a $15,000 suit. I hadn't. My tray had been empty. But the lie crystallized instantly, giving him reason to manhandle me, to drag me from the table without raising immediate alarm. I'm so sorry, sir. Sorry doesn't pay for custom tailoring. He yanked me forward and I stumbled, hip hitting the table edge. The violence in his grip was real enough to make me gasp. Theatrical enough to make other diners look away in secondhand embarrassment. He pulled me toward the kitchen entrance, moving fast. Behind us, I heard Isabella's voice, sharp with panic disguised as irritation. Min, don't be ridiculous. Just send her home. We can. I'm going to speak to her manager. His voice cut through the restaurant like steel. And then I'm having her fired. We were 10 feet from the kitchen doors. The 3 men who'd been loitering shifted, hands moving inside jackets. I saw calculation in their eyes. Was this part of the plan? Was Ji-hoon just being tyrannical? Or had he figured it out? 5 feet. Ji-hoon's grip on my arm shifted, fingers finding my pulse point. He pressed down and I felt my heartbeat hammering against his thumb. When we go through those doors, he whispered, mouth so close to my ear anyone watching would think he was berating me, you run left. Don't stop. Don't look back. The kitchen doors swung open. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed azure moonhole. Not gradual, not flickering, absolute and instant, like someone had extinguished the sun. The jazz quartet died mid-note. Crystal glasses hit the floor in cascading crashes. A woman screamed. Ji-hoon moved. 1 second, I was standing upright. The next, I was being propelled through kitchen doors with enough force to knock air from my lungs. Emergency lighting kicked in. Dim red bulbs that turned everything into a nightmare of shadows and blood-colored light. The kitchen was chaos incarnate, chefs shouting in a babble of languages, Spanish, French, Korean, as pans clattered and something heavy hit the floor. Through crimson haze, I saw figures moving with purpose that had nothing to do with cooking. Left. Ji-hoon's voice cut through noise. I ran. My cheap work shoes skidded on slick tile as I bolted past prep stations, past industrial ovens radiating heat like open furnaces. Behind me came sounds of impact. Flesh on flesh. A grunt of pain. Something metallic skittering across floor. I risked a glance back. Ji-hoon fought like violence was his native language. A man in white chef's coat lunged at him with a blade definitely not for dicing vegetables. Ji-hoon caught his wrist, twisted, and the knife clattered away. He drove his elbow into the man's throat with surgical precision, then spun him into a second attacker hard enough that both men went down in a tangle of limbs. 3 more came through the swinging doors. Not the men from the dining room, these were kitchen staff, or people wearing kitchen whites as camouflage. One spotted me. The girl, he shouted in accented English. Grab the girl. Terror shot through me like electricity. I grabbed the first thing my hand found, a pan of hot oil on the range, and without thinking, without hesitating, I hurled it at him. The oil caught him across face and chest. His screams were inhuman, primal. He dropped to his knees, clawing at burning skin. The smell hit me, scorched flesh and hot metal, and my stomach tried to climb up my throat. Move, Sarah. Ji-hoon was suddenly beside me, hand finding the small of my back, propelling me forward. Blood streaked his white dress shirt, and I couldn't tell if it was his or someone else's. We burst through another set of doors into dry storage. 50-pound bags of rice and flour stacked floor to ceiling, creating a maze of narrow passages. Red emergency lighting barely penetrated here, leaving pools of absolute darkness between shelves. Footsteps thundered behind us. Voices shouting in Italian. Ji-hoon pulled me into a gap between shelving units, pressing us both flat against concrete wall. The space was so narrow my chest crushed against his, my face buried in blood-stained fabric of his shirt. He smelled like expensive cologne and copper and something darker, adrenaline maybe, or the particular scent of violence. His heart hammered against my forehead. Fast, but steady. Not panicked. Just ready. How many? I whispered, breath fogging against his chest. Too many. His voice was barely audible, lips brushing the top of my head. The kitchen was full of them. This wasn't just a hit. This was an occupation. 3 men entered the storage area, shadows stretching grotesquely across walls in red light. They moved methodically, checking between shelves, weapons drawn. Not guns, knives, and something that looked like a garrote. They wanted this quiet. Ji-hoon's arm wrapped around my waist, holding me so still I wasn't sure I was breathing. His other hand moved to his ankle, and when it came back up, there was a gun in it. Small, black, lethal. The nearest man was 5 feet away. 4. 3. I could see his face now in crimson glow, young, maybe mid-20s, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He was looking right at our hiding spot. Time stretched. I felt every beat of my heart, every molecule of air moving in and out of my lungs. Ji-hoon's finger rested on the trigger, body coiled like a spring beneath expensive fabric. The man took another step forward. Then somewhere in the kitchen, glass shattered, followed by shouting in Korean. The man's head whipped toward the sound. He gestured to his companions, and all 3 moved back toward kitchen doors. Ji-hoon waited until their footsteps faded before exhaling. The breath moved through his chest, expanding and contracting against mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just stood there in darkness, pressed together by necessity and survival, while chaos raged around us. Your people, I whispered. My people. He pulled back slightly, putting an inch of space between us. In red light, his face looked carved from stone, all sharp angles and shadows. A cut above his eyebrow leaked blood down the side of his face, making him look like something from a nightmare. They'll create a distraction. But we need to move now. The back exit is compromised, a voice said from behind us. We spun. A man stood blocking the path to the rear door, backlit by emergency lighting. He was massive, easily 6'4", built like he'd been carved from a mountain, and he was pointing a gun directly at my head. "Dae," Ji-hoon said. And there was something in his voice I couldn't read. Not fear. Recognition, maybe. Or betrayal. "Sorry, boss." The big man's expression was carefully neutral. "Orders from the top." Jae-sung. The name came out like a curse. "Your brother sends his regards. And his regrets. Nothing personal." Dae's finger tightened on the trigger. Ji-hoon moved faster than physics should allow. He grabbed a bag of rice from the nearest shelf and hurled it at Dae's head. The bag exploded on impact, sending white grains everywhere, creating a snow globe effect in red light. Dae fired blind. The shot went wide, the report deafening in the enclosed space. Then I was on the floor, Ji-hoon's body covering mine as bullets punched through rice bags and sent white powder cascading down like rain. Above us, wood splintered. Metal pinged. The world was gunfire and screaming, and the weight of Ji-hoon's body pressing me into cold concrete. "Stay down," he growled against my ear. Then he was rolling off me, returning fire. Muzzle flash from his gun lit up the storage room in strobing bursts of white light. Dae went down. Not dead, but hit. He clutched his shoulder, weapon clattering away. 2 more men came through kitchen doors, and suddenly it was a storm of bullets. I pressed myself flat against floor, hands over my head, rice grains digging into my palms as they rained down. Something hot grazed my upper arm. Not a bullet, but close enough. The shock of pain made me gasp. "Back door." "No." Ji-hoon's hand found mine, yanking me to my feet. We ran, stumbling through rice that crunched beneath our shoes like snow. The back door loomed ahead, metal, industrial, marked with a glowing green exit sign. Ji-hoon hit it at full speed, using his shoulder like a battering ram. The door exploded open. Then we were outside. Chicago winter slammed into us like a freight train. Temperature had to be below 0, wind screaming through the alley with enough force to steal breath from my lungs. Snow swirled in frantic spirals, turning the world into a whiteout that was the polar opposite of the restaurant's golden warmth. My server uniform, thin polyester blouse and slacks designed for climate-controlled elegance, not survival, was criminally inadequate. Within seconds, wind cut through to my skin, turning sweat ice cold. My teeth started chattering so hard I bit my tongue. Ji-hoon didn't slow down. He pulled me down the alley, our shoes crunching through dirty snow and ice. Behind us, the back door banged open again. Voices shouting. A black SUV sat at the alley's mouth, engine running, exhaust creating ghosts in freezing air. Ji-hoon wrenched open the back door and physically threw me inside. I landed on leather seats that smelled like new car and gun oil. He dove in after me, slamming the door. "Drive," he barked in Korean to the man behind the wheel. The SUV lurched forward, tires spinning on ice before finding purchase. Through the rear window, I saw figures spilling out of the restaurant's back door. Too many to count. Weapons raised. One of them aimed at our vehicle. The rear windshield spiderwebbed, but didn't break. Bulletproof glass. The sound of impact was dull, distant, like someone tapping on a fish tank. We sped away, leaving Azure Moon behind in a blur of snow and muzzle flash. Inside the SUV, silence descended. The only sounds were our ragged breathing and the whisper of tires on icy pavement. Ji-hoon leaned forward, speaking rapid Korean to the driver. Instructions, coordinates, I couldn't tell. Blood dripped from the cut above his eyebrow, spattering on leather seat. I looked down at myself. Rice grains clung to my clothes and hair like confetti. My arm burned where something had grazed it, the sleeve of my blouse torn and spotted with blood. My hands trembled. Not from cold anymore, but from pure adrenaline crash. "You're hurt," Ji-hoon said, attention snapping back to me. His English returned, slightly accented but perfect. "I'm fine. You're bleeding. So are you." He wiped blood from his eyebrow with the back of his hand, barely acknowledging it. Then his fingers were on my arm, examining the wound with clinical detachment that somehow felt more intimate than concern. His touch was surprisingly gentle, considering those same hands had just killed multiple people with ruthless efficiency. "Grace," he pronounced. "You were lucky." "Lucky?" I laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. I just burned a man's face off and got shot at in a rice storage room. That's your definition of lucky. You're alive. His dark eyes met mine and something shifted in them, a microscopic crack in the ice. That's the only definition that matters. The driver said something in Korean. Ji-hoon responded, then turned back to me. We're going somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't look for us tonight. You mean Isabella and whoever Jae-sung is? His jaw tightened at the name. My half-brother. Older by 2 years. Meaner by a lifetime. I thought he was dead. Apparently I was misinformed. And Isabella was his from the beginning? I suspect the whole engagement was a setup. A way to get close enough to kill me without raising suspicion. He said it with such cold pragmatism, like discussing a failed business transaction rather than the woman he'd been planning to marry. The pregnancy was probably his too. Insurance in case she couldn't pull off the hit. A male heir to legitimize his claim to the family empire. The casual way he dissected the betrayal made my skin prickle. This was a man who saw threats and contingencies, who measured relationships in terms of leverage and risk. And I'd just become a variable in his deadly equation. Where are you taking me? Ji-hoon studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in passing street lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost kind, which somehow made it more terrifying. Home. Home was not a word I would have used. Prison maybe. Fortress definitely. The compound sat on a promontory overlooking Lake Michigan, surrounded by walls that looked designed to repel armies. As we passed through 2 separate security checkpoints, both requiring retinal scans and codes the driver rattled off in Korean, I watched the safe, familiar world of Chicago disappear behind us, replaced by something colder and more absolute. The mansion itself was pure brutalism. Concrete and glass, all harsh angles and uncompromising lines. No warmth, no softness. Just power rendered in architecture. Floodlights illuminated the perimeter, turning falling snow into a blizzard of white static against darkness. We pulled into an underground garage that looked like it could house a small military. The SUV's engine cut, and suddenly the silence was oppressive. Ji-hoon exited the vehicle with fluid grace of someone who'd never questioned his right to command space. I followed on legs that felt detached from my body, adrenaline finally giving way to bone-deep exhaustion. The elevator required a keycard and fingerprint scan. The ride-up was smooth, silent, the LED display counting floors and Korean characters I couldn't read. Ji-hoon stood beside me, close enough that I could feel heat radiating from his body, a sharp contrast to the cold concrete surrounding us. You're shaking, he observed. I'm freezing. He shrugged off his ruined suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It was still warm from his body and smelled like him, that expensive cologne now mixed with gunpowder and adrenaline and blood. I pulled it tighter, hating how good it felt, hating how my body responded to even this small gesture of care from a man who was essentially my captor. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Not a hallway, not a foyer, just straight into a living space that was more museum than home. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the lake, black water stretching to an invisible horizon. The furniture was minimal, expensive, arranged with geometric precision. Everything was gray, concrete floors, steel fixtures, slate-colored upholstery. Even the art on walls was monochromatic, abstract slashes of charcoal on white canvas. It was beautiful the way a knife is beautiful. Cold and sharp and dangerous. 3 men waited in the living room, all wearing black tactical gear, all armed. They straightened when Ji-hoon entered, speaking in rapid Korean reports, I assumed, from the way Ji-hoon's expression darkened with each sentence. He barked orders, dismissive and absolute, and 2 of the men left immediately. The 3rd approached me, holding out his hand. Phone. I blinked. What? Your phone, Ji-hoon translated, voice flat. Give it to him. Why? Because I said so. The casualness of his dominance sent a spike of anger through my exhaustion. I need to call my father. Tell him I'm okay. He'll be worried. Your father is fine. Ji-hoon moved to a sideboard, poured amber liquid into a crystal glass. I had my people check on him 30 minutes ago. He's asleep in his hospital bed, completely unaware his daughter just participated in a shootout. That doesn't mean I don't need my phone. Sarah. He didn't raise his voice, but the command in it was absolute. Now. I wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him to go to hell, that he had no right to strip me of my one connection to the outside world. But the man in tactical gear was still waiting, hand outstretched, and Ji-hoon was watching me with those obsidian eyes that saw everything, calculated everything. I pulled my phone from my apron pocket, surprised it had survived the chaos, and placed it in the man's palm. He took it without a word and left. The elevator doors closed behind him, and suddenly it was just Ji-hoon and me in all that gray space. "You can't keep me here," I said, trying to sound defiant and not terrified. "Can't I?" He took a slow sip of his drink, regarding me over the rim of the glass. "What exactly is your alternative, Sarah? Walk out into the snow and hope the Moretti family doesn't find you? Go home to your apartment and wait for someone to put a bullet through your door? I didn't do anything wrong. You saved my life. In the world I live in, that makes you either very valuable or very dangerous. Sometimes both." He set down his glass and moved toward me, each step measured and predatory. "The people who tried to kill me tonight don't care that you were just an innocent bystander. All they care about is that you cost them money, power, and reputation. They'll want to know exactly how much you saw, how much you heard, and whether you're going to become a problem." He stopped inches away, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see flecks of gold hidden in his irises, the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the way his pulse beat in his throat despite his calm exterior. "So no," he continued softly, "you can't leave. Not tonight. Not until I figure out how to keep you alive. By making me your prisoner? By making you my responsibility." Something flickered across his face, too fast to read, too complex to name. "There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're very brave for someone who served appetizers 2 hours ago. And you're very arrogant for someone who almost died tonight." The smile widened fractionally. "Almost doesn't count in my business. You either survive or you don't. There's no participation trophy for nearly getting assassinated." Despite everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the complete insanity of my situation, I almost laughed. The sound died in my throat when his hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw with unexpected gentleness. He tilted my face toward the light, examining the cut on my arm, the rice grains still tangled in my hair, the way my whole body trembled despite his jacket wrapped around me. "You need to clean up," he said. "And eat something. Then we'll talk." "Talk about what?" "About why you saved me. About what happens next. About—" He stopped, thumb pressing against the pulse point in my neck, feeling my heartbeat jackrabbit beneath his touch. "About why you're looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you can't decide if you want to kill me or kiss me." The accusation hung in the air between us, dangerous and true. Because he was right. Somewhere in the chaos and adrenaline and terror, something had shifted, something that had nothing to do with gratitude or Stockholm Syndrome, and everything to do with the way his body had covered mine on that storage room floor. The way he'd killed for me without hesitation, the way he was looking at me now like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "I don't want to do either," I lied. "Liar." But he stepped back, releasing me. And the absence of his touch felt like a physical loss. "Third door on the right. There's a bathroom, clean clothes in the closet. Take your time." I fled. There was no other word for it. I walked quickly toward the hallway he'd indicated, feeling his gaze tracking me the entire way. The third door opened into a guest suite larger than my entire apartment. King bed with slate gray linens, sitting area with a view of the lake, and a bathroom that looked like something from an architectural magazine. I locked the door behind me, then immediately felt foolish. If Ji-hoon wanted to come in, a lock wouldn't stop him. Nothing would stop him. This was his fortress, his kingdom, and I was just a subject he hadn't decided what to do with yet. The bathroom mirror showed me a stranger. My hair had come loose from its practical bun, wild curls falling around my face, studded with rice grains. Blood had dried on my sleeve, brown now instead of red. My dark skin looked ashen, exhausted. My eyes looked too large, too frightened, the eyes of someone who'd just watched people die. I stripped off my ruined uniform and stepped into the shower. Water came out scalding hot immediately, no waiting, no sputtering, just perfect temperature at the turn of a dial. It felt obscene, this casual luxury, while my father lay in a hospital bed downtown, hooked to machines that counted his heartbeats like coins. I stood under the spray and let myself cry, just for a minute, just long enough to let the terror and confusion and bone-deep exhaustion escape in hiccuping sobs that water washed away. Then I stopped, because crying wouldn't change anything. I was here. Ji-hoon was right, going home would be suicide. And somewhere in this city, people who wanted me dead were regrouping, planning, waiting. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that felt like clouds, I found the clothes Ji-hoon had mentioned. Not designer suits or uncomfortable dresses, but simple, practical things: sweatpants, thermal shirt, thick socks. Men's sizes, but someone had left a belt. I dressed quickly, towel-dried my hair, and stared at my reflection again. Still a stranger, but a cleaner one. Less terrified. More determined. I was leaving the bathroom when I heard it, voices from the main room, speaking in rapid Korean. Ji-hoon's voice, controlled and cold, and then another voice, younger, crackling through what sounded like a speakerphone. The conversation was tense, punctuated by long silences. I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against wood. The Korean was too fast for me to catch actual words, but I understood tone. The person on the phone was taunting him. And Ji-hoon was listening with the patience of someone planning murder. Then I heard a name that stopped my heart, Jae-sung. And another, Isabella. And a third that I understood without translation, pregnant. The call ended with a sharp command from Ji-hoon. Something shattered, glass hitting a wall, probably. Then silence. I waited a full minute before opening the door. Ji-hoon stood by the windows, one hand braced against glass, looking out at the lake. He'd changed clothes too, black pants, black shirt, still barefoot. The cut above his eyebrow had been cleaned and bandaged. He didn't turn when I entered, but his voice carried across the space. Jae-sung sends his regards. And his regrets. I moved closer, careful not to startle him. Your brother. Half-brother. Son of my father's first marriage before he married my mother. Jae-sung was the heir, the golden child, until he made the mistake of thinking he could steal from the family without consequences. Ji-hoon's reflection in the glass looked like something carved from stone. My father had him exiled to Taiwan 5 years ago. Everyone thought he'd died there. Wishful thinking, apparently. And Isabella was his lover long before she became your fiancé? The pregnancy is his. Genetic testing confirmed it months ago. She'd done the test at barely 6 weeks, early enough for it to go unnoticed, early enough for me to confirm the child wasn't mine. The clinical way he dissected it made my chest ache. You knew she was pregnant with another man's child, and you were still going to marry her? It's business, Zara. Power. Alliances. Territory. Love has nothing to do with it. He finally turned to face me, and his expression was carved from ice. But betrayal, that's personal. And what they did tonight, killing my men, trying to kill me, putting you in danger, that demands a response. What kind of response? His smile was a blade. The kind that ends with my brother's empire burning and Isabella in the ground beside him. The casual promise of violence should have terrified me, should have sent me running back to that locked bedroom, should have made me beg him to let me go, to leave me out of whatever war he was planning. Instead, I heard myself ask, "What do you need me to do?" Ji-hoon's expression shifted, surprise, calculation, something that might have been respect. You want to help me? I want my father safe. I want to go home without looking over my shoulder. And I stopped, surprised by the truth of what came next. I want them to pay for what they did tonight. For the people they killed. For the life you would have lost if I hadn't been in that wine vault at exactly the wrong time. Or exactly the right time. He moved closer, each step deliberate, until we were standing in the same charged space we'd occupied earlier. You're not what I expected, Zara Mitchell. What did you expect? Tears. Hysterics. Demands to be released. His hand came up, fingers brushing a damp curl away from my face. Not offers to join a war against the Italian mob. I'm full of surprises. So I'm learning. His thumb traced the line of my jaw, the touch featherlight but possessive. But understand this, if you stay, if you help me, there's no going back to your old life. The moment you walked up to that table with a note, you stepped into my world. And my world doesn't let people go. The warning should have scared me, should have made me recoil, demand my phone back, demand he call me a cab, demand anything except this dark pull toward a man who'd just promised wholesale slaughter with the casualness of someone ordering coffee. But I'd watched him fight tonight. Watched him kill without hesitation to protect me, to protect himself. Watched him move through violence like it was choreographed, like his body knew the steps by heart. And I'd felt something in that storage room, pressed between his body and the concrete floor while bullets flew overhead. Not just fear, not just adrenaline, but recognition. Like my soul had been waiting my entire life to meet someone just as trapped by circumstances, just as desperate to survive, just as willing to do terrible things for the people they loved. Then I guess I'm not going back, I whispered. His eyes darkened with something that might have been triumph, might have been desire, might have been the recognition that we were both walking into something we couldn't control. No, he agreed softly. I guess you're not. I woke to alarm screaming through the concrete fortress. The bedroom was still dark, but red emergency lights strobed through windows, turning everything into a horror movie nightmare. I bolted upright, heart already hammering before my brain fully processed what was happening. The door slammed open. Ji-hoon filled the frame, no longer barefoot but dressed in full tactical gear, a gun in each hand. His face was carved from fury. Get up. Now. I stumbled out of bed, still wearing the borrowed sweatpants and thermal shirt. What's happening? We're compromised. He grabbed my wrist, dragging me toward the door. They found us. That's impossible. We just got here. Apparently not impossible enough. We were moving fast through the penthouse, his grip on my wrist bruising. Other men in tactical gear appeared from doorways, speaking rapid Korean, weapons raised. Ji-hoon barked orders, then pulled me into the elevator. The descent felt eternal. Ji-hoon stood rigid beside me, jaw clenched, fury radiating off him in waves. When the doors opened into the garage, chaos greeted us. SUVs being loaded, men running, someone shouting coordinates. How did they find us? I asked, my voice small in all that controlled panic. Ji-hoon didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on something across the garage, a man in a white coat holding what looked like a tablet, pointing at a screen and speaking urgently in Korean. Then Ji-hoon's gaze swung to me. And what I saw there froze my blood. Suspicion. Cold, calculating suspicion. You, he said softly. And that softness was more terrifying than any shout. You led them here. What? No. Search her. The order cracked like a whip. 2 men appeared, hands professionally impersonal as they patted me down. I stood there, humiliated and terrified, while they checked every pocket, every seam, looking for what? A tracking device? A phone I'd somehow hidden? Clear, one of them reported in English. Then how? Ji-hoon grabbed my shoulders, his grip iron. How did they find us, Zara? Who did you call? What did you do? Nothing. I swear I didn't do anything. Tears burned my eyes, rage and fear in equal measure. You took my phone, remember? You locked me in a bedroom. What exactly do you think I could have done? The man with the tablet approached, speaking urgently in Korean. He held up the screen, showing some kind of GPS map with a blinking red dot. Ji-hoon's eyes narrowed, then widened fractionally. He looked at me, then at the tablet, then back at me. When did you last see your father? The non sequitur threw me. Yesterday. Why? Did you pick up his medication? Yes, from the pharmacy on 42nd Street. I picked it up on my lunch break before my shift because understanding crashed over me like ice water. Oh my God. Ji-hoon was already moving, pulling me toward one of the SUVs. Get in. Now. What does my father's medication have to do with? He shoved me into the back seat, then slid in beside me. The driver took off before Ji-hoon even closed the door. The insulin you picked up yesterday, Ji-hoon said flatly. It was tagged. They put a tracker in the packaging, betting you'd have it with you or nearby when things went down. But I didn't bring it here. It's at home in my apartment. Isn't it? The man with the tablet was in the front passenger seat. He turned, holding up an evidence bag. Inside was a small box, pharmaceutical packaging with my father's name printed on the label. My father's insulin. Your purse, Ji-hoon said flatly. It was in the car from the restaurant. The insulin was in your purse. Memory crashed back, grabbing my bag from my locker during my break. The insulin box I'd picked up during lunch, planning to drop it off at the hospital after my shift. I'd completely forgotten about it in the chaos of the night. I didn't know, I whispered. I swear I didn't know. The Morettis did. Ji-hoon's jaw was clenched so tight I could see muscles jumping beneath his skin. They tagged the medication days ago, anticipating you might become a loose end because you'd witnessed something, a meeting maybe, a conversation. Even before tonight, they were covering contingencies. The GPS tracker in the insulin box. The Morettis tracking my movements. And I'd led them straight to Ji-hoon's safe house like a bloodhound following a scent trail I couldn't even see. I'm sorry, I said, and the words felt pathetically inadequate. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to? Ji-hoon laughed, but it was a broken sound edged with something darker. Do you have any idea how many people are dead right now because you didn't mean to? How many of my men were in that building when the breach happened? I said I was sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back. He grabbed my wrist, yanking me forward, and I saw the gun in his other hand, black, heavy, pointed at the floor, but oh so close to not being pointed at the floor. The driver said something sharp in Korean. A warning. A plea. Ji-hoon ignored him. Give me one reason, he said softly, why I shouldn't put a bullet in you right now. Terror locked my throat. This was it. This was how it ended. Not in a restaurant shootout or a storage room brawl, but in the back of a speeding SUV because I'd been too stupid, too naive to realize I was carrying my own tracking device. But beneath the terror was something else, something angry and defiant and tired of being afraid. Because my father didn't ask for any of this. The words exploded out of me, raw and jagged. Because he's lying in a hospital bed right now with machines breathing for him. And if I die, he doesn't get his next dose. Because you can kill me, Ji-hoon, but that doesn't solve your problem. That doesn't stop your brother. That doesn't bring your men back. His finger rested on the trigger. It makes me feel better. Then do it. I grabbed his wrist, pressing the barrel against my chest, feeling cold metal through the thin thermal shirt. Put the gun against my heart and pull the trigger. But before you do, send someone to Mercy General, room 304. Make sure James Mitchell gets his insulin. Because he's the only innocent person in this entire mess. We stared at each other, both breathing hard, the gun pressed between us like a promise or a threat or both. Outside the SUV windows, Chicago blurred past street lights, storefronts, the ordinary world continuing while my life hung suspended in the space of a trigger pull. The man with the tablet spoke again, urgent and pleading. Ji-hoon's eyes never left mine. What did he say? He said the tracker's been destroyed. We're clean now. No one's following us. Good. He also said I'm an idiot. If I kill the only witness who can identify Isabella's voice, confirm the details of the plot, testify if this ever goes legal. Am I going to testify? You're going to do whatever keeps you alive. He lowered the gun slowly, and the absence of its pressure against my chest felt like I could finally breathe. And what keeps you alive is being useful to me. Then use me. The words came out stronger than I felt. Stop waving that gun around and use me. I heard Isabella in that wine vault. I heard names, times, locations. I can tell you everything if you stop threatening to blow my head off long enough to listen. Something shifted in his expression, the rage banking slightly, calculation returning. He released my wrist, and I saw the marks his fingers had left, red impressions that would bloom into bruises by morning. This is not the end, dear viewers. What is coming is stronger than you can imagine. Brace up. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, beautiful people. See you in the next one.